Hello, my name is Dante Renee, and welcome to the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more. Like tonight's film, 1997's Tender Flesh by JESS Franco. JESS Franco's Tender Flesh, 1997. This is actually part of it's available on DVD from Alternative Cinema, EI, Independent Cinema Studio, Shakarama Cinema, on a double feature bill with Lust for Frankenstein. And this is the back of the DVD. You can get this for a good price on Amazon or eBay. I believe it's still in print. Actually, it could be out of print, but available pretty well used as well. We're going to be looking at Tender Flesh right now, and I'll be looking at Lust for Frankenstein in the future on this YouTube page. Tender Flesh, 1997, and this actually has Lena Romay. It has some new actors, and it also has some of Franco's old 70s actors as well, mixing together, combining into a whole in 1997. Essentially, what we have here is we have a film that involves a girl who has a history of making money, using her body, using her sexuality, and gets involved in a nightclub, and from that nightclub gets involved with some very wealthy people who are willing to pay for some sexual adventures with her. And within this world, this is where we encounter the mysteries of Tender Flesh, the mysteries of this location, the nightclub owner, and the wealthy people, and the boat, and the cuisine, and everything within this world. And the film starts off with a very interesting quote that states something like, "God makes the food and the devil makes the cooks." And I was left with that at the beginning of the film, and I kept thinking about it throughout the film. And it did me well to think about it throughout the film, because it actually seasoned the rest of the film appropriately. This is Tender Flesh, 1997. Let's get into it, folks. First and foremost, I'm going to talk about the soundtrack for this particular film, and just bear with me here as I move around a little bit. And I have the soundtrack here, which is actually available on Subterfuge Records, which is from Madrid, Spain. This is the soundtrack CD that you can pick up used on eBay and Amazon. It's obviously out of print, but most people don't even know this thing exists. And this is an unbelievable soundtrack, and it's actually done by a group of people, including Daniel White and Mr. JESS Franco himself. So let's talk about this music a little bit, because my gosh, is it special. This film is wall-to-wall music, and I'm gonna go out and say that this is in my top favorite JESS Franco soundtracks with all of his films. Right up there with Vampiros Lesbos, right up there, Eugenia, Story into Perversion, Version Among the Living Dead, Nightmares Come at Night. Just, Franco has always been known for unbelievable soundtracks, right? Well, this one is so freaking rich and amazing. And what is so interesting about it is that it captures his feels from his 70s films with the mysterious religious organ music and women's sexual voices, mixing with amazing Spanish guitar, acoustic and electric, I believe, and then like almost 90s rock with vocals, and mysterious mixings of sounds from different genres and different worlds of the 70s and the 90s, and mixing the psychedelic with 90s rock, and mixing the mysterious and the sleazy and the exotic and the dark and the surreal with rock. An atmosphere. This is such a unique soundtrack. I mean, we have 90s rock in here, and we have also just instrumental, exotic, mood music, and sexy music, and mysterious music. I mean, this is such, if this was a band, if this CD came out as a band today, it would be noted as such a unique alternative album of music that doesn't sound like anything else out there today, even in 2017. That is correct. What an unbelievable soundtrack to Tender Flesh that is a main character in this film. I found myself watching this film and I just couldn't wait to hear more of the music with the visuals, as if I was watching a music video. I mean, just unbelievable stuff. When we look at the style of this movie, you know, I got to tell you that, well, let me say one more thing about the music. It is freedom. It is total artistic, creative, mysterious, sexual freedom. And if you put it on, you can put it on and get transformed to the beaches of Spain and get transformed to a mysterious, dark nightclub anywhere. Okay? So, and horror. So let's get into the style of this film. Franco's style in this movie is evident from the first frame of the movie, as we look at a reflection inside of Lena Remey's glasses. The reflection in the glasses. You know, we get a kaleidoscope of colors in this film, a kaleidoscope of strobe lights and imagery and wild, seemingly in-camera special effects, or just wild special effects, stuff I've never seen before. Possibly it was from the palette of 90s special effects in camera or something, but just so wild, so psychedelic. You know, images twisting around with one focus on one image. Weird spotlights outside. Just wild, you know, pink colors and disco balls and my gosh, like the wildest, possibly the wildest, you know, camera flares that I've seen since Macumba Sexual. That where they kind of explode into different beams into the camera. I mean, just wild stuff at every corner. Those types of, every light just explodes into 5 or 6 separate amazing beams, as if there's fog there separating them. I mean, just so filled with light and light effects, and there's even times where he kind of crops the image, you know, in some way, and you see the black edges around. I'm not using the right terminology, of course, but and then this film also has somebody in the film who is filming also, and so you see his camera filming while we're watching, you know, through Franco's lens as well, and so there's almost this in-camera, camera-to-camera type of thing going on here as well. You know, I mentioned the music, and I'm also going to mention the sound design of this film. There is wild sound design, especially in the climax of this film, with an actual laugh track. Yes, a laugh track explodes out of nowhere and offers you a further ride into the surreal, the bizarre, possible black humor. I mean, just wild stuff going on in this film. This film, it has so many twists and turns with the story, and it has such a surreal element to it, and such a bizarre experimental element to it, off the hinges, breaking the boundaries, true freedom, and twists and turns with the storyline where you don't know really what's going to happen next. And you can see some plays off of others of his films from the 70s, like Countess Perverse, but it really deviates and goes off into some other territory. Now, I will say that the dialogue sometimes is hard to understand in this film, as of a lot of his one-shot production films where the actors are speaking in English and it's not their main language, and also just the sound is a little bit harder to hear. But for the most part, you know, you're going to get it, and you'll get the phrases. And you'll get the movie. Now, the sexuality of this film, we have full frontal nudity from the women in the film, and but nothing too explicit, really. Nothing too invasive, like other one-shot productions. But we have writhing around and moving and running and simulated sexual activity and amazing tongue kissing in this film and lesbian and kind of orgy sequences that are very psychedelic. And dialogue, let me see that tender pussy, dialogue that is very sexual. And in terms of, we have a nightclub act unlike anything I've seen before. As if you thought that Franco's nightclub acts, he had nothing else under his sleeve. This one is so surreal and so bizarre at the beginning of this film, involving large penises on what seemingly looks like mummies. I mean, I got to tell you, folks, there's some unbelievably wild stuff and impossible fluids as well. We have some very bizarre sexual sequences in this film involving possible urine and urination and under the table cunnilingus and just wild stuff, boot fetishes and all of that. And in terms of violence, this is really one of the most violent Franco films I've seen. It's in that crop of the most violent Franco films. There's blood, and there's a mean-spirited, dark nature to the violence in this film, with the knives and the suffocation and the gunshots. A very vicious, violent gunshot sequence. And I don't want to give away too much, but even in the brutality of the concepts of this particular storyline in the film, violence plays a very, very big role in this film, and also sadistic violence with whipping, and taking that title very, very literally, a tender flesh, and the themes of the themes of that quote at the beginning of the film. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, come to life geniusly in this film, artistically, creatively in this film. Thank you, Mr. Franco. That God makes the food and the devil makes the cooks. Oh my gosh, what does that mean? What does that mean within the framework of tender flesh? It means so much. This movie is a ride. There are long sequences of bodies writhing and cream over the open wounded sores of sadistic sexual nightscapes and kisses and caresses of flesh and breasts and tongues moving wildly and sexual innocence meeting sexual freedom and liberation and sexual perversion and sadism. And themes that Franco has explored before of free love and sadism and excesses of sexuality and innocence, but also leading in here with money and crime and a lot of different aspects and a crazy twist at the end. And this is JESS Franco's Tender Flesh, 1997. Thank you so much for watching the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page, where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more, like this one. And this girl right here, who's also going to be in this one, very sexually attractive, looks great, and Lena Romay is older in this film and still completely naked. Thank you so much, folks. 10 Room Bizarro. Have a great night.